Hello, and welcome to Dave's Delightful Dishes. As always, I'm Dave, and it is such a delight to have you here in my kitchen with me today. And today I have a request. Tracy from England, of all places, asked me to do this next recipe. A year ago, my wife and I did a year of keto just to see how it worked out, and you really got to give it enough time to let that happen. And one of the things I made for her for breakfast on the go was a cheese and egg bake, which was making a almond flour biscuit and dropping it into a thing of eggs, and cut them into sections, and that becomes kind of like a breakfast biscuit for someone who can't have a regular biscuit. And that's what we're going to make today. So let's check it out. So let's start with the ingredients. Now today, there's a bunch of ingredients for this. So I'm just going to kind of read them off, and then I'm going to have a picture that goes on right afterwards. I took an overhead of all the ingredients. We have 5 tablespoons of golden flaxseed meal, 1.5 cups of almond flour, 2 tablespoons of baking powder, 2 tablespoons of dry milk or milk powder, depending on where you're at. What depends on what they call it. 1 teaspoon of the xantham gum, a pinch of salt, 4 tablespoons of cold butter, where you cut them into individual tablespoons, 1 tablespoon of melted butter, 2 eggs, 1 tablespoon of cider vinegar, and 1/4 cup of green onions that I've sliced, and that ends up being like 3 stems of them. So that is for the biscuit part. And then the filling, we have 6 eggs, 3 tablespoons of heavy cream, another pinch of salt, a cup of bell peppers diced, a cup of mushrooms diced. And the mushrooms I used today were the baby bellas, which is a cremini mushroom, but whatever mushroom you like. 1/2 cup of yellow onion diced, about 1/2 cup of breakfast sausage. Now this I will show you. Right now, this is just raw sausage, not in links, and I'm gonna brown it. We're gonna brown it and crumble it so that it goes around the bake. And then 3 ounces of cheese. I'm using goat cheese for my wife because that's her favorite. But if you want cheddar, if you want feta, just pick a cheese that works for you. And then that's the story. Now, as far as some of this stuff goes, I happen to have chickens, so I get the eggs from them, but obviously you'll most likely have to get them at the store. And then green onions, I discovered that they grow pretty well just by sticking them in some dirt after I did it experimentally. And then when they get kind of long, they fell over. And then I cut those ones off, and they start making new sprouts pretty much right away. So here's a way to, not that these are expensive, but it's a way to save even more money because this thing just seems to keep on regenerating itself. Call it a pro tip. So now the first thing we got to do is we got to brown up this sausage. So let's head over to the cooktop. So we have a hot, in this case, cast iron pan. And I have just moistened it with oil. I took a rag and rubbed it around just so that there's a little bit of lubrication so I don't have to worry about this sticking. And then I'm going to take my piece of sausage and I'm going to break it down into chunks. Because if I leave this fully stuck together, I'll end up with one big sausage patty, and that's not quite what I'm looking for here. And I want to crumble it further as it's cooking. And this is going to come out to about 1/2 cup, give or take. If you want to be exact, feel free to make a whole bunch of it and then take 1/2 cup of the crumbled stuff and go to town. So this has to cook for a little bit, and then we're going to break it up as we go, but let it start browning first. I will get back to you when this is looking to be about done. I expect to be about 5 minutes. All right, as you can see, it's now browned up, and I've broken it into smaller pieces. So I'm going to turn the heat off. And it doesn't have to be cooked all the way through because it's still got other cooking processes that are going to happen later in this recipe. But I want to make sure it's brown and not just sitting there raw. Now this is part of the symphony, not the main player. That's why there's not that much of it. If you want to be very sausage forward, that's fine too. In which case, add more sausage and maybe reduce some of your vegetables. But here I have, that's about a half a cup, and it's going to go over for the meal. So now let's head back over to the workstation so I can show you how we make the biscuit. All right, so now it's time to make the biscuits. But first off, if you are not doing keto and you don't feel the need to do an almond flour biscuit, then by all means, you skip this part and then go right on to the next section and have your regular biscuit mix ready to go to drop in instead. But for those of you who want the full keto, here we go. We got to put the dry ingredients in first, which is the 1.5 cups of almond flour, the 5 tablespoons of golden flaxseed meal. Now, these you're going to find at like a health food store. And sometimes you'll find them in your grocery store, but some of them can be a little bit harder to come across. So if you can't find them there, check out the fancier store. That'll be where you'll come across them. Then the rest of the dry stuff, we've got the baking powder and the xantham gum and the milk powder. And the baking, and if I hadn't mentioned it, the baking powder, and then the salt. And we have to whisk all that together. And try to get any bigger, let me kind of do this like that. And we're trying to get any of the bigger chunks out too. And we're looking to just get this being pretty well put together. Now, much like a regular biscuit, I've got these 4 tablespoons and I've got very clean hands. So each of these tablespoons I need to put in here, and I have to mash it with my fingers to spread it. And I'm just kind of doing this motion, but in the flour, and trying to spread that throughout this dough to make the dough. And once you have that incorporated around, at that point, your hands are pretty gross. We're going to wash our hands, and we're going to get back to this. So now I'm going to take my green onions, toss them in, and my eggs. And I'm going to put my apple cider vinegar in with the eggs. And then they're all going to drop in. So I guess I'm going to drop them straight into the bowl. That's just the way I've always done it. And I've got my little thumb hole here so I can stir. And now I've got to combine all this. And it's going to make a kind of a thick batter. And just keep on combining and it'll come together into a ball. And now that I have this here, I'm going to let that just kind of hang out and rest while I'm prepping the rest of the dish, which we'll do over at the cooktop. Now, we're not going to cook it on the cooktop. It's just a lot easier to show. And I have an oven that I've preset to 350 degrees. All right, so I have a baking dish here that I have greased. I use spray. I use like a cooking spray, but if you want to use other grease methods, that's fine too. But you definitely want to have something on those sides if you ever expect to get it apart again. And now I'm going to put the vegetables in first. So I've got the bell peppers. Now, if you want to make this not cost a fortune because of how much the colored bell peppers cost, for the cost of 1 bell pepper at my store, like a red bell pepper is like $5. For that same $5, I can get a bag of these smaller ones. And that really brings the cost down. So even though the cost takes a little bit more time to cut it up, you're going to save a lot of money. That goes in, as do my onions, my mushrooms, and then the sausage. And we want to stir to kind of spread that out and make sure it's even. So everyone's getting kind of like, you're going to get the same bite or something similar throughout the whole spread. All right, now that that's laid flat, I'm actually going to put a little bit of pepper on it. This is optional. And now what I've done is I've taken the cream and the eggs and that pinch of salt, and I've whisked that together really heavily. Now you notice the color of this. That's because the eggs that I'm getting from my hens, I'm feeding them a special laying feed with marigolds in it. So I'll get these really vibrant yolks. It's still going to look something like this, but it might not be quite this bright when you do it. And that's going in. And we got to spread it all around. Give it another stir. And depending on how thick you want these, you could double this up. You could use a whole dozen eggs here if you wanted to have a really thick biscuit. But this is about right for what we're looking for here, because we're going to be doing portions. Oh, wait, hold on. Let me get the cheese on first. That's really kind of an important part here. So now this goat cheese, and you can use as much or as little as you want. This happens to be 3 ounces. And you see I'm trying to make it so that they're going to be even portions when we take them out later. So there those are. And the final thing I got to do here is I need to get that last tablespoon of butter that we've melted. And it's one of the few times I use a microwave. And I'm going to brush the top of these biscuits. Now, if you want to have these be deeper or smaller, you could always use a smaller baking dish. It's really kind of up to you. All right. So now this is going to go into that 350-degree oven for 30 minutes. And we'll get back to you when it's out. Well, 30 minutes has elapsed, and this is out of the oven. And as you can see, the egg mixture has expanded and gotten bigger, and the biscuits have cooked. So you can absolutely do this, and you could eat this right now if you wanted to, but this is really designed to be something that we take away for later. So we want to let this cool, at least enough so that you can handle it as far as it not falling apart on you. We need to let that cool down a little bit so it kind of solidifies. But after about 5 minutes of, quote, cooling, we can go ahead and give it some slices, and then we'll talk about the rest over at the workstation. So now that this is cooled enough, which is still quite warm but not steaming anymore, I took a small knife and I made this into 6 portions, going in between and even in between each of these biscuits. So now what we can do is we can take, let me keep one of my bare hands on because this is still pretty warm. It's always tough to get the first one out. There we go. Perfect. And that greasing of this pan ahead of time makes a big difference. So that slides out onto a dish. I'm going to take a little, since I'm doing this right now, I'm taking a little bit extra of this green onion and just kind of moving it around there. And then you have a delightful, a truly like good-looking little breakfast that you can have frozen. Take it to your, take it to work, take it around, throw it in the microwave, and it's ready to go. And it's delightful. So this is one of those meals that, although it is a plan-ahead meal, you could, if you had some forethought, you could potentially make this on the day of. But realistically, this one's best to make ahead of time, put in the freezer, and then be able to pop out whenever you might need it, or be able to have it on the go. And as far as the ingredients, you can mix and match to make this whatever you want. If you don't like sausage, but you like prosciutto or bacon, go ahead and put that in instead. Whatever you like, whatever kind of cheese you like. Obviously, you don't have to do keto biscuits. You could do regular biscuits. You could use croissant dough, although I think the biscuits were going to come out better. I'd love to have you guys try this at home. Tracy, I really hope you try this at home since you asked me for it. And I do apologize in advance because being in America, I'm not really great at the metric system, but I do know that there are conversion charts where you can take my ingredient lists and convert them for your use. And give me a shout if any of this stuff doesn't make sense as far as the English supermarket. I'll see if I can come up with something else for you. Other than that, guys, I'd love it if you'd check out my Facebook page for Dave's Delightful Dishes. The link will be below. I've got, obviously my recipes go up there, as do some background stuff, ideas. It's a good place to give me comments back and forth. Let me know how things are done, and it's a good place to share pictures with me. I also have an Instagram at Dave's Delights with a Z. So Dave's Delights, Z at the end. And that one, I show pictures of all my stuff, and it also has a chat function, so you can contact me there as well. Now, I would love it if you would like and subscribe if you like what you see, and tell your friends, because this is more fun with more people, and everybody knows somebody who needs a little help learning how to cook. And if you like what you see as far as my aprons or my stickers, and there's a lot of other stuff, I have a Spreadshirt account which is linked on my Facebook page, and I got a couple of patterns, and there's going to be more going forward. Maybe some of this makes you happy, in which case go ahead and buy it, and I appreciate the effort. Anyhow, you guys enjoy this. Have a wonderful day, and I'll see you at the next recipe.